share my screen and start my PowerPoint. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yep.
Okay. Great. Sorry. My phone is ringing. Let me turn that down. Okay. Sorry. My name is Leslie Hegewald. I'm the GIS coordinator at the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments, and we've been contracted to provide redistricting service to the city of Salem for the council ward redistricting. This is the third time I've done this. I also did this following the 2000 and 2010 censuses. We have a little less time this time than we had the last two times due to the delay in the census data being released. But we're making good progress. And so I'm just here to talk about that process and how things happened. So redistricting is necessary every 10 years following each decennial census for cities or districts that elect by representative area. And the purpose of it is to rebalance the population among wards to ensure equal representation as mandated by the Secretary of State. So the process is driven by a couple of different things, the first being the data. And that is the US Census data that comes from the 2020 decennial census. It is called the Public Law 94-171 redistricting file. And it's the same data that is used by states for legislative, Senate and congressional redistricting. It's a very limited data set. It only includes total population, population by race and ethnicity, and population by race and ethnicity for people aged 18 and over. And it is tabulated at the census block level, which is the smallest level of geography for which data is tabulated. You may be familiar with other census geographies, such as census tracts, block groups. The census block is the smallest of those. So the second thing is the criteria that is mandated by the Secretary of State in the form of a directive that was issued to cities and districts on September 9th of this year. You can see the criteria here. This is exactly as it is in the directive. And it includes things like being of equal population, being contiguous, not dividing communities of common interest, et cetera. For the population requirement, we actually use a 5% deviation from the target population. So the target population would be the population of the city divided by the number of wards. So that would be in a perfect world if we could get every ward exactly the same. Since we have to use the census blocks, we're aggregating those to form the boundaries. We can't always get it exact. So we're trying to stay within 5% plus or minus of that target population. In addition to the Secretary of State's criteria, we also have some additional considerations that we're using in this process. And these were developed following interviews with each council member to identify what their thoughts, ideas, priorities were. Among those are following neighborhood association boundaries where possible, minimizing the number of small sections of neighborhood associations in each ward as much as possible, using natural boundaries that make sense on the ground, to make it easier for people to know, what ward they are in. And then there were some additional suggestions that pertain to specific local areas that the counselors identified. So the first step of the process was to do an analysis of the current council wards, and that's what this map is showing. So to no one's surprise, West Salem, Ward 8, grew the fastest. So it is 12.3% over the target population, which is 21,942 people, and that's the target. Also, Ward 4 is over by just over 11%. Wards 2 and 6 are pretty significantly under the target. Ward 5 is just a little, 1 is just over or under just a bit. Wards 5, 3 and 7 are okay, but when you start having to move things around in adjacent wards, often you have to take, make some changes to those wards, even if their populations are okay. It kind of has a domino effect. So there were 3 alternatives that were developed, and these all take a little bit different approach. The first alternative was developed, we're calling it the minimal change option. So this was done to balance the population among the wards with making as minimal change to the current boundaries as possible. Alternative 2 is that minimal change, and then some alignment was made to try to follow neighborhood association boundaries a little bit better. And then alternative 3 is also trying to follow the neighborhood association boundaries, but also to try to accommodate future growth in the outer wards where potential future growth is thought to occur. So this is alternative 1. Again, this is the minimal growth option. We have a few areas where things are changing, most notably over in West Salem, where the population is too high in Ward 8, so we have to bring Ward 1 further into West Salem. And we've done that along the Edgewater District and into the Capitol Manor area. Over here in Ward 6, we've taken a little bit from Ward 5 and given to Ward 6 to bring it up to the population it needs to be. Down in Ward 7, we've given a little bit of area to Ward 3. And down in Ward 4, we've had to give the area west of Liberty Road to Ward 7. And all of these populations do balance within the 5% that we are shooting for. And this is the alternative 1 boundaries with the neighborhood association lines. They do follow some places and not so well in others. We just can't get it perfect every time. Alternative 2, again, this is trying to better align with neighborhood association boundaries. A little bit different here. We've taken Ward 1 further into West Salem and to encompass this area. We've also brought Ward 1 down into this section where Minto Brown Island Park is, which was currently in Ward 7. There's an area here in Ward 2 that we've taken from Ward 1 to help balance that population. Over in Ward 6, we're not only taking that same area from Ward 5 in the previous option, but we're also taking a little bit from Ward 2. And then another significant change is that this area that's north of Highway 22 and east of I-5 is being moved from Ward 3 to Ward 2. And this is the alternative 2 boundaries with the neighborhood association boundaries as well. Alternative 3 is the minimal change with neighborhoods and allowing for future growth. So you see that we've tried to get the population for these outer wards below or near below, the target population. And another significant change, and this is also in the previous option, this area here that's currently in Ward 7 is being moved to Ward 2. So this is Fairmount Hill and Candelaria areas. And this was something that one of the counselors suggested. And so we're looking at that option. Also down here in Ward 4, we've had to give another area to Ward 7 to better balance that population. And also in this alternative, we are also seeing this area moving from Ward 3 to Ward 2. And here's that alternative with the neighborhood boundaries. So we also did an analysis of the race and ethnic data for each alternative as mandated by the Secretary of State, which one of the criteria states that no district shall be drawn for the purpose of diluting the voting strength of any language or ethnic minority group. We do not want to intentionally or unintentionally divide communities of common interest. And so that's why we do this exercise. And citywide, the non-white and Hispanic population comprises 36.5% of the total population. So this is the current council wards, and the shading indicates the number of non-white and Hispanic people in the census blocks. So the darker colors indicate more people. And so East Salem is the most concentrated with non-white and Hispanic population. with wards 5 and 6 containing the most. Actually, there are 3 wards that are above the city average, and that is wards 2, 5, and 6. You can see in this table those percentages. So alternative 1, there's really not a lot of change in the boundaries for this alternative, and so there's also very little change in the racial makeup of the wards. This is the result of that. If you can look at this table, this is the current wards here. This is the alternative 1 wards. And if you compare the percentages, they're changing very, very little. They're just fractions of a percent difference. And so we're saying that there's very little impact here. For alternative 2, we are seeing a small impact in the racial makeup of ward 3. Let me go to that slide. So because we're moving that area that's north of 22 and east of I-5 from 3 to 2, the percentage of non-white and Hispanic population in Ward 3 is dropping from 32% to just over 28%. And that again is a result of them moving that population. And alternative 3, we're seeing pretty much the same thing. We have that same issue with moving this area, which is pretty highly concentrated with non-white and Hispanic population. And so that makes about a 4% difference. It's just about, it is exactly 4%. So going from 32% to 28% of non-white and Hispanic people in Ward 3. So the results, alternative 1, we're saying there's no impact. There really is not a lot of change there. Wards 2 and 3, yes, Ward 3 becomes slightly less diverse, but in the end, wards 2, 5, and 6 still remain above the city average for non-white and Hispanic population. So we feel confident that we are not unintentionally dividing communities of common interest. So the city would like your feedback, and there are several ways that you can provide that. You can send an email to planningcomments@cityofsalem.net. You can check out the interactive map feature, which I'm going to demonstrate in a few minutes. You can find this on the city's website at this link. You can attend one of the virtual open houses, this is the second one. And then there will be a public hearing scheduled on November 22nd, and more information will be coming about that on the city's website. So we do have an interactive map for the redistricting work, which I'm going to demonstrate now. And if you go to this page on the city's website and you can just click the link, it will open up that map application. And you can use this application to explore the different redistricting alternatives. So your navigation tools are here in the upper left. You can zoom and pan and such. Over here in the menu, if you click this information icon, there are instructions for using the site. You can turn layers on and off in the layer list. So if you want to see this with the neighborhood association boundaries, you can turn that on. You can look at the house district lines, and you can toggle off the on and off the different alternatives to view those. You can also click on the map, and you'll get a pop-up of information for the different layers. So this one is giving you that census block information. You can arrow through the different layers. So this is the current wards, and it gives you the population information. And this is the alternative 1 layer and its population information. We also have links up here to the comment maps. So there are 3 separate comment maps for each alternative. And all you have to do is click on the link and it will take you to the comment map. And you can click on the map itself, or you can click on the ward number in the sidebar, and it will open up this window that has this information about that, that ward. And you can click on the comment flag and the form will open up and you can fill out that information and submit your comment. If you're kind of a power user, you can also, we have a draw tool here that you can use to draw shapes on the map and then export to a PDF or an image file if you wanted to provide that to the city with your feedback. And then there's a select tool. And with this tool, you can select the census blocks. You can select by point, which would be a single block, or by rectangle, or by polygon. So if you wanted to, see what would happen if you move this area to a different ward, you can select those. You can open the table at the bottom, and under options, you can, let's see, sorry, something's not right. Oh, I know. Click on the census blocks. Okay, then you can show all records, so all selected records. And then you can click the population field and statistics, and you'll get a statistics box that will tell you the sum of the values. So that is all I had. We can take any questions if there are any.
If you have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat, or you can unmute and ask us. And yeah, it looks like Shelby put a link to the interactive map. And actually, I'm going to drop a link to the council staff report in case you didn't see that. We did a staff report on the 3 alternatives. We're going to have a public hearing coming up on the 20th.
That's at 6 o'clock.
And you can submit testimony. Any of the ways that Leslie documented that testimony will be submitted to the council. You can also send me an email. At least I didn't introduce myself. Planning administrator, my email's on the city website on the page for this project. And if you want to sign up to testify, you have to sign up between 8 and 2 on the day of the meeting on the city's website. And it's a Zoom meeting as well. Well, if there are no questions,
Hey, Lisa, this is Nick
Hi,
Forty.
Nick.
I'm in West Salem. So I do have a question. It's kind of a technical question. So if I look on alternative 1, the street on which I live is it's contiguous with the actual, proposed boundary. So I'm not sure what that means in terms of which, when the boundary is on the street line, what does that mean in terms of, which ward would those people on that street live on, or how do I interpret that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's really hard to depict on these maps because we're showing the block boundaries, and the block boundaries can follow any type of physical feature. So a lot of times they do follow roads, and usually that would be the road center line, but they can also follow streams. Sometimes they followed power lines. So there's different types of things that they can follow. So it would require having to kind of drill down and see what feature it's following. If it's following a road, you can pretty much assume that it's following the center line. So then you can kind of guess, based on which side of the street your house is on, which ward it would be. But we do plan to put out some more detailed maps once the council has had a chance to kind of digest the information and maybe narrow it down a little bit. So we will be producing some maps that will have that street detail, and will include other features if they're following other things as well. So.
Yeah, and the interactive map is
Thanks
a really,
for that explanation.
yeah, no problem. And the interactive map, if you haven't looked at that yet, because you can zoom in really to detail, and you can see it in that way, because there is, I think, one alternative where, like Leslie said, where it follows the creek, but most of the time it follows a road or follows like what would equate to a property line or something. So
Yeah,
if you go to that interactive map and zoom in,
you have to zoom in pretty far to see the street detail. So you might just have to click that zoom tool a few times, and then you should be able to tell kind of what it's following.
Yeah, and sometimes, so when it goes down the streets, and it will oftentimes mean people on one side are in one ward and people on the other are in a different ward. That happens sometimes with neighborhood association boundaries, although more often through this project, I've come to realize that a lot of the neighborhood associations have put their boundaries one block off of a street so that people facing each other in the same neighborhood, which they think makes sense. We can't necessarily do that because of the census the boundaries. And so we do have some where they can't line up necessarily. And some there'll be like a sliver in one neighborhood in a ward, which the counselors have wanted us to try to fix, but it's been difficult because of neighborhood association boundaries, which aren't changing through this process. So
yeah, here I'm going to share my screen again. So I've got the map application up and I've kind of zoomed into West Salem. So so here's kind of the dividing line between this is alternative 1, proposed wards. So this is following Orchard Heights and then going down Parkway Drive. I'm not sure at what point it changes to Cascade Drive, following this way. And then it goes to Eola, over to here. And then this is Crozer, hard to read, Crozer Street, Northwest. And then down to College Drive, Northwest here. And that takes you pretty much down to 22. So you just have to, like I said, use that zoom tool to really get in there till the street detail shows up. But we, like I said, we will be doing some PDF maps that are more detailed as well. Did that help?
Yeah, it did help. Thank you. I can look at that in more detail. I didn't drill down into it sufficiently, but that makes more sense. So thanks for doing that demonstration. That was helpful.
No problem.
Well, if there's no more questions, we are going to hang out here on the Zoom call in case somebody comes late, and then we'll chat with them. But feel free, Nick, if you want to jump off, if we've answered your questions. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, should I do the same as we did last night and just share my screen and have the PowerPoint up there?
Yeah, I think that's good. And then Shelby, if you let somebody else in, let us know. Okay.
Will do.
Sylvia, I think we can call a wrap on it.
Okie dokie.